How's it going? I'm Connor and I am a English for academic purposes tutor, and that basically means I teach academic skills predominantly to international students, but also I'm a long-term online learner and I've been studying online for the past 4 or 5 years. And what I wanted to do is I want to try to make a short video for international students or any students in higher education who are now having to make a shift from traditional class-based learning to online learning, because they're quite different experiences and people are going to be going through different things, and maybe the things I have to say here can help some people get a better experience from their learning, because many of us haven't signed up for the online aspect, and now we're having to change how we approach how we learn completely. So I hope these tips, I've got 10 suggestions, and hopefully they can benefit someone watching this. Firstly, online learning, it's not easy, it's very tough, it's very difficult. Presents a lot of challenges, primarily because we have to change the way completely how we learn. However, and you've got to be really committed to that change, and it can be very, when you're away from your classmates and stuff, it can be very tough to help you to kind of concentrate. However, what I will say is you will learn a lot about yourself, and despite your concerns, you're already really equipped to succeed as an online learner, because international students are typically very resilient and very ambitious, and they're already I think a lot of you guys are already very focused and determined to succeed in very challenging circumstances, a lot of times in a second language, a lot of times in a very different country. And some of this kind of resilience and commitment is something that I feel will be one of your strongest assets when we come to this change, if you're engaging with this new learning environment. One of the things that online learning is different from traditional classroom-based learning is that more than ever, it's really important that you get into the habit of clarifying instructions and then following them as closely as possible. Typically, with any learning, there's a certain amount of flexibility involved in that. Maybe teachers don't want you to do something perfectly, but because you are not fortunate to be in the company of the teachers every day, you may have to rely on emails or forum posts, and the communication may be irregular. You should really get into the habit of following all the instructions as clearly as possible and finding out the best ways to communicate with your actual tutors and classmates. Typically, if you're in the college, you'll see people walking around and you can ask them questions, but when you're online, when you're at home, maybe you've gone back to your country because of the situation, you may have found it's very difficult to get in touch with people. So learning the best way to communicate with people and also to try to follow instructions as clearly as possible is really important. However, it's not all that bad, because frequently when instructions are given, they're posted online so you can always find them. And frequently there's a forum, and if you check questions asked by other students, or if you ask questions yourself, other students may be able to help you. So it's still your responsibility to make sure you get all the information. But at the same time, there's a lot of flexibility, because you're able to review them, you're able to approach them again, and you're able to possibly read through them carefully to ask more specific questions. Working online is very different from working in a classroom. In a classroom, we have people to support us. We can be in a classroom and take information in and absorb it. But when we're online, it's very different a situation. We typically rely solely on ourselves. We don't have other people to ask questions and stuff like that. So when we are in this online environment, we need to really work to our strengths and try to go against our weaknesses. Things like, if you're easily distracted, how can you work within that kind of those distractions, I suppose. If you study, you can study better in the evening or the morning, so you can set your own study times. Likewise, you've already studied a lot overseas. You've always spent a long time of your life studying to get to university, so you know where you work best in college and your habits and what you're strong at. So think about that. Have a good think about who you are as a learner and how can you use your experiences to help you flourish within an online classroom. Your online classroom is a new learning environment. It's a new space. It's situated in your own room or your own home. So you need to learn how this new classroom works through a computer screen. All right, there's going to be different rules. There's going to be different expectations. There's going to be different timetables. So you need to find out as quickly as possible how that operates and how can you help that benefit you to do as well as to get the best possible results for your course. One of the things you might notice, I mentioned already, you don't see your teachers, you don't see your class nights. As a teacher and a student, I can say that an email doesn't always work. It can be hard to get responses, so sometimes there may be better ways of communicating with people, and maybe the information there is there already. And to reiterate my previous point, it's your responsibility to make sure that you are getting the information. If you get information and you don't respond to it, it can be problematic. So and a response doesn't always need to be negative or positive. Online, there are thousands and millions of different kind of resources that we can use to help our learning online go better, I suppose is the best way to put it. Okay, especially recently, more and more resources are being let out for students to help them excel in their learning online, and frequently you can access them for free or through your university. So please take a look at the university library, for example, and see what actual resources they have already. You should be able to access them if they're in the library and you have your library permissions. Likewise, you also need to think about there's other sources as well, other learning resources that you can benefit from. They have very generous trial periods, or you can get significant student discounts. So explore that area and see what works for you, and see how you can actually use your status as a student to get the most from technology. A lot of the time your university will be very happy to support you in this area. Online, there are thousands and millions of different kind of resources that we can use to help our learning online go better, I suppose is the best way to put it. Okay, especially recently, more and more resources are being let out for students to help them excel in their learning online, and frequently you can access them for free or through your university. So please take a look at the university library, for example, and see what actual resources they have already. You should be able to access them if they're in the library and you have your library permissions. Likewise, you also need to think about there's other sources as well, other learning resources that you can benefit from. They have very generous trial periods, or you can get significant student discounts. So explore that area and see what works for you, and see how you can actually use your status as a student to get the most from technology. A lot of the time your university will be very happy to support you in this area. Going to move on now and focus a little bit on different changes you can make to the way you study and the way you work now that you are an online learner. First of all, I think is when you get to your home or your flat or apartment or where you're studying, is make sure that you have a set workspace. Ensure you can work there when required. Make it yours. Make sure that it has everything that you need, that makes you comfortable, a good chair, enough space on your desk, electricity. Is it warm or is it cool, depending on where you are? Try to keep it organized, try to keep it tidy, and have places to store information. Make sure you've got some good light. If you need a window or air conditioning, make sure that you can have it there, and have this as your space where you can study when required. Sometimes we might find that maybe you need to share it with another person. That's okay. Just make sure that you have your time marked in for when you need to use it, and that's not going to be a problem if you try to work there and somebody else needs to use it. Next thing that you need to think is, once you have your space sorted out, is try to work out an actual timetable where which you can set and which you can work to, and that suits your lifestyle, your environment, your actual requirements, and your ability to study. Obviously, there will be required times that you need to study. You need to be in the classroom, online, or logged on, but the rest of the time is kind of up to you. So think about that, see how you can use it, because you don't have to commute anymore or travel, or possibly there's less activities around. You may have a bit more free time, so you might have a lot more flexibility to actually study when you want to, rather than when you have to. So try to work this out, set yourself a timetable, and then work to it. On that note, it's important also to think about your free time and how to use your free time, because free time is really important. But now that we're in this particular situation, our free time is completely different. I've been an online learner for years, so for 4 years, and frequently, we have free time. Do we go and study in that time, or do we use it to do important things? Spend it, communicating with family or relatives or friends, or possibly watching a movie or something like that. It's really important, especially if in a particularly stressful situation, to make sure that you have safe time that you can spend with not concentrating on your study, not concentrating on your academic work. Okay. Obviously, you're gonna have more free time. It's gonna be a bit different because you can't walk into a cafe or a restaurant, or you can't meet friends. But we can do a lot of this stuff online, or we can sit back and read a book and relax. So understanding how to use our free time, just because we have more free time doesn't mean it's dedicated to study. Likewise, it doesn't mean it's dedicated to free time. But we do have we have a lot more room to work around and make sure we have a rewarding learning experience. It's really, really important, though, despite everything that I say there, that you set some clear goals within the environment that you have set yourself up. Think about, what do you need to achieve, how you need to do it, and how it needs to be completed. For every course, these 3 questions are very important. Okay, it's not about necessarily, I need to get 100%. It's much different than that now, because what we're dealing with is more than likely assessment and not tests. And assessment is different than tests, because we have more time to work on it. So once we know these things, we can actually think about how we are going to study a little bit better, and then we can set our goals. If we know how much a particular exam is worth versus how difficult it could be, it might give us an indication of how much time we need to work on it, and we may have a lot more flexibility in terms of how we can use our time to produce better work, I suppose. And in that way as well, we can think about working on our strengths, working on our weaknesses. In addition to that, it's really important as well, when we're working out these particular goals, is we have to understand, in terms of academic goals at least, in terms of grades and things like that, we need to understand how they're actually graded and how points are awarded, so that we can focus in particular ways. So we do need to spend a bit more time analysing what the assessment is and how it's going to be done, before we can move forward. Um, Being aware of how you're being awarded points is really important for setting priorities, because you're going to have to work in especially in especially different situations, and your courses aren't necessarily going to be the same. And if you're trying to concentrate on a range of courses at a time, it's vital that you have these things arranged. The most important thing, though, as an online learner, as any learner, but as an online learner, it comes into effect really heavily, is that we need to think about communication. How do we communicate? Communication is so important, not just in terms of how do we express our ideas or try to communicate our problems with tutors or classmates, but it's also about reading and understanding tasks and trying to respond to the requirements of the course. And all of this is so important. Communication is very different as well. A lot of the time it's going to be text-based now, where before you could talk to a tutor, now you're going to have to write them an email or possibly a forum post. You may have to communicate them through a teleconferencing with 12 other people, and this could be very uncomfortable because you may feel maybe your English isn't strong enough, or perhaps that your internet might be weak. So it's a very different way of communicating, but it's so important. So being comfortable communicating and working at the best way that you can effectively communicate with your classwork, with your classmates, and on your coursework is so important, and it's something that you need to prioritize from an early stage. Okay, thank you so much for watching my whole video there on changing from being a classroom-based learner to an online learner, specifically for international students, I suppose, but it's really for anyone who is currently going through this situation. Just a few tips. And just to recap, I started off by talking about it not being easy, and it's a big challenge. Moved on to telling you to be sure to follow instructions clearly as possible. Then we talked about working to your strengths and weaknesses. Then learning how the classroom actually works, the online learning classroom works, and how you work within that classroom. Then I suggested that you need to explore the resources available online to help you as a learner. And then after that, I think I moved on to having a set workplace where you can study in your home or in your apartment or dorm. Following that, it was about setting timetables, and then after that, I mentioned the importance of using your free time effectively to benefit yourself, just to be happy, I suppose. And then my second last point was focusing on goals, and then the final and most important point of all was communication is key. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any further comments or questions, you can drop a comment below, or you can follow me on Twitter for loads of fun. Thanks very much. I'm Connor. It's been lovely.